Good morning and welcome to the BBA's webinar on implementing the new conduct rules in your organisation. My name is Philip Allen, I'm the Director of Learning at the BBA, and today to discuss these matters I'm joined by presenters Simon Hills, BBA Executive Director of Prudential Capital and Risk, Philippa Grocott, who's partner at FSTP, and Simon Mercer, Product Manager at Unicorn Training. Before Simon Hills kicks us off, may I remind you that this is an interactive webinar in which you can participate by asking questions throughout the presentation. Just click on the Questions tab below the presentation and type out your questions. Please note that all questions are anonymous. We will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible. However, all the presenters have agreed to be on hand after the presentation to answer your questions. You will also notice that there's a tab for resources that you can click and download the PDF, which is in the Resources tab. Again, that's available for you to review what the BBA is offering as a training proposition for your conduct rules training in the future. Simon, over to you.
Thanks very much, Phil. And the senior managers regime is going live in about a month now, isn't it? And I think that it is the mechanism by which the banking industry restores trust in itself. There's no doubt at all that although trust is returning to banks, it's not fully there yet. And without the potential to change behaviour in banks from top to bottom, and the bottom is where the conduct rules comes in, perhaps more than at the top, then we won't have re-established that element of trust in people's minds. So where are we at the moment? By now, hopefully, you'll have filled in all your senior manager returns, people who have signed their statements of responsibility. You've got responsibilities map in place, ready to be able to demonstrate to the regulator, if she or he comes knocking, that you have appropriate systems and controls in place, and if something went wrong, that you and your colleagues took the right steps to prevent the breach occurring. So the senior managers regime very much aimed at the top level of people in banks, the board and the executive committee, and further on down there in the hierarchy, the certification layer, people who can broadly be described as material risk takers, and they have to be certified by their employer, as the name suggests, as fit and proper on entry into the bank, and then each year thereafter. And then there are finally the higher level rules of conduct, which applies to nearly everybody in the bank. And I say they're quite high level conduct rules, and I'm sure that for all of us on the line now, we live by those rules already. But the important thing is you're going to have to be able to demonstrate as a firm that you've given the right generic and more specific training to people within the bank to whom these conduct rules will apply. And that's going to be the tricky bit. We've got a little bit more time for this because the conduct rules don't apply to everybody, although they do apply already to certified people, or will apply to certified people and senior managers from the beginning of next month. They won't apply to everybody for some while longer. But I don't think that means you can be complacent. I'm sure you're not being complacent in how you consider what the conduct level these conduct rules are going to mean for you as a bank and for you as and your colleagues. So on that, I'll hand over to Philippa from FSTP.
Thank you, Simon. I think a good way to kick this off is to ask you a couple of questions, just to give us a feel of where you are with your conduct rule training. So if I can ask you the first question, and this will appear on your screen. So the first question is, how far have you progressed in delivering your conduct rules training? So A, you haven't yet started delivering conduct rules training. B, you've delivered conduct rules training to senior managers. C, you've delivered conduct rules training to senior managers and certification regime. And D, you've fully delivered conduct rules training to, and that should be to all of the people across your organisation. So that, I'm afraid that question coming up on the screen is slightly incorrect. So the D should be that you have delivered right across the whole of your population. So if you would like to click on now to give us an understanding of where you are with your conduct rules.
happen any minute now, where you should get the results up. Okay. Right. He says with bated breath that the published results will appear shortly. Okay, wonderful. That's it. Presenters, what do you think?
That's quite interesting, because we've got 35.6% haven't yet started delivering conduct rules training. So that's interesting, because your senior managers should have had conduct rules training, because when they signed their confirmation that they understood what they were taking on in prescribed responsibilities, etc., they were signing also to say they understood the conduct rules and the implications. So that's quite interesting. 26.7% delivered to conduct rules training to the senior managers. And senior managers and certification ranked 31.1%. That's good. And fully delivered, we've got a very small percentage there. Fully delivered conduct rules training. So well done if you have accomplished all of that. Simon, have you got anything?
Yeah, and I think if you haven't yet started delivering conduct rules training to your senior managers, you need to move ahead with it pretty quickly, because remember there are some additional conduct rules which do apply to senior managers over and above the sort of more broadly targeted conduct rules. So I think that would be a cause of concern.
Let's go on to question 2 now. So question 2 is, how are you currently delivering conduct rules training to specific job families across your organisation? So A, e-learning, B, face-to-face, or C, a combination of both face-to-face and e-learning. If you'd like to click on one that's most appropriate to you now.
Okay, we'll just wait a few seconds before the results come up. Okay. What do you think? Just got the results here.
As you can see on your screen, actually that's absolutely no surprise from the experience that we've had, that it is if you like, a blended learning approach, a combination of both face-to-face and e-learning, so 59.7%.
And I think I'm quite heartened by that, because a large number of people who are now within the scope of the conduct regime won't necessarily have been in the scope of anything like this before. So I think there is an absolute need to sit down with those cohorts of people so that they get the message that this applies to them, really.
Absolutely, Simon. And I think certainly, sometimes, especially with the new holders of senior management functions, and those people that are new to the certification regime, they need to be able to ask questions and interact, but perhaps get the cement level, as it were, the base level from e-learning. So a blended approach is perhaps, I would suggest, is a good way of looking at it, and we'll talk more about that as we progress today. Okay, so as Simon said right at the beginning, that all the documentation should be in now, so you should have completed your responsibilities map in with the regulator along with the statements of responsibility and other documentation. And as we've seen, you're in the process from your responses to the questions, you're in the process of training people on senior management regime and certification regime, on the conduct rules and other implications in both those areas. And I'm sure for a lot of you there was a large glass of wine or two on Monday evening after everything had gone in and you'd pressed the submitted button, and hopefully a lot of you did it before, but I know some of you would have, it would have taken you to the last minute for various reasons, and I'm sure there was a big sigh of relief across the whole of the relevant firms when that was done. So, up on your screen now you should see the first tier and the second tier of the conduct rules. So the first tier being, as Simon said, applicable to nearly everybody. What I would say is through our experience, what we've encountered is the questions around, well, you know, we're going to, not questions but rather statements around, we're going to include everybody. So as you will be more than aware, the regulator has suggested that there are a number of ancillary roles that you do not have to include with the conduct rules. For example, your switchboard operators, your facilities managers, etc. But a lot of response that we've had, and certainly Simon will have experienced as well from those that have taken the learning, is that they, in their organisations, have decided to include everybody within their conduct rules, and you know, we can quite appreciate why. And the second tier, applicable to senior managers, and I'm not going to walk you through each one of these, because obviously we've got limited time, but what I would like you to do, if you have any questions on either the first or the second tier, if you could send those over to us, so type in and send a question over to us, and be more than happy to answer those questions as we go along.
Do you think that there are more challenging conduct rules for companies to adhere to than others in this, Philippa?
Yes, I do. In terms of the senior managers, I mean, what I have done is I've included a slide as we go along, and we'll talk about delegation in a moment. But I think, yes, it's over all of them. We see a struggle to really interpret what that means. So in terms of what it means, you need to bring it alive by giving appropriate examples to people, because it's really hard for them just to, you must act with integrity. So we know that integrity means honesty, but what does it mean to people in those individual roles? So if we look at the next slide, in terms of training requirements, just to clarify those, you've got to provide suitable training. As Simon said, you've got to provide the training that gives them specific examples in their job roles. And what we have found as well is that firms are struggling. How do we do this? I mean, if you had to provide specific examples for each job role you had right across all the relevant firms, you would probably be there forever and a day, and you'd be spending huge great bills on training, etc. So what we've done is we've put together job role families, and this may be a way that you take on board the conduct training within your organisations if you haven't started already. That you class together roles that are similar and then give examples based around those roles. So it cuts down the work, if you like, because I don't think the regulator is looking for absolute specific examples for every single job role. They're looking for how do you make people understand the implications and what is relevant to the role that they do within the firm. And so as a firm, you've got to make sure that you are training people properly, that they do understand how the rules apply to them. Because we see more and more floor walking now, don't we, Simon, with the regulator? And, it's not just the senior managers that get asked the questions when they come to do the supervisory visit. It's other people within the firm, and therefore they are quite likely to be asking questions on how the individuals within firms understand what the implications of the conduct rules and where they might be in breach of certain conduct rules.
And I think you've also got to remember that your people may be treating these interactions with the supervisory teams as quasi-investigative. It may well be that you'll want to record those sorts of questions much more closely and the answers that are given so that you can come back to them if there's a subsequent question, perhaps as part of a preliminary enforcement process, to demonstrate you had taken the right steps to deliver the training. People did understand what it was they were expected to do.
Absolutely. As we know, if the regulator had a strap line, it would be, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So, yes, good evidential, robust evidence to substantiate, the training that you've done, etc. I think it is a definite necessity. So, one of the things I did say was about delegation. I just want to bring this out because this is a question that I'm getting a lot when I'm talking to firms at the moment, is about this question of delegation. I think someone's clicked on to the next, so let's go back to the previous slide. So this question of delegation, and I wanted to bring it up because to sort of preempt, I think, questions that probably we were going to get about delegation, because every single firm that we've worked with so far has asked, how far do we go with this situation with delegation, and how do we prove that we have looked at this in the right way? Because this is new to senior managers. So those people that were in the approved persons regime or are currently in the approved persons regime, would have been used to the statements of principle. And this is and if you look at the SMR new conduct rules, then a lot of those map over, as do the individual conduct rules. But this is a new one. So delegation is a new one. And as you know, managers will delegate to other people within their teams, in their areas, to carry out some of their responsibilities. And it always has been the case that when senior managers do this, they've got to be aware of who they're giving it to, can they actually carry out that responsibility, have they had the right training, what is the extent and limitation of that delegation, and also, are the senior managers providing the right level of supervision to the people that they've delegated to. And it's going to be much more of a thought process going forward about who is delegated what from a senior management point of view, because they might delegate their responsibilities, but they are still accountable for that responsibility, and therefore they will be much more thought about how they go ahead and do that. And I just thought I'd bring that out as one of the areas that we've had particular questions on.
And just a thought from me on that, Philippa, in a sense, although we've heard, haven't we, the PRA and the FCA say many times this is not going to be an enforcement-led regime, this is the tool by which the PRA and the FCA can enforce against certified persons and against senior managers. And, a question I have is, does perhaps it's a philosophical question, I don't know, but does a sort of sanctions-based system in a way repel a person who's naturally inclined to do the right thing and behave ethically, as I'm sure the vast majority of people in our banking system are, or does it rather impel them to look after number one a bit more and lose that sense of collective responsibility, the ability to have that courageous conversation?
Yeah, an interesting thought there, and I will only know that, I think, Simon, when it plays out. So when the new regime is implemented and we see the regulator's response and we get an idea of their thinking around that. And it's always very interesting to see. So, when a regulator says, it's not mandatory or etc., they then come back and ask a few questions, which I'm always aware of when the regulator says it's not mandatory. I will say it's not mandatory, but let's do it anyway to safeguard. Yes. Be prepared, I think, yes. Isn't that the Cub Scout motto?
There's just a couple of questions, if I may, ask our presenters. We've got one. The first question: for the certification regime, has a generic certificate template been published?
I don't think there is a generic certification regime template. I think that's up to you to decide how you want to deliver that certification. Obviously, you've got to record keep it, but I assume it'll come out of everybody's annual appraisal process.
They have given a sort of an overview of what they would like to see in it, in terms of what role it is, what competencies have been assessed, what it allows the individual to do. But there's no template as such that's been given. And
in a sense, as your trade association, if you felt it would be worthwhile us working together to develop a generic certification diploma, if you like, that people could put up on their downstairs loo wall or whatever they want to do with it, be very happy to think about doing so. Get in touch with me at the BBA via Phil.
Great.
I think it will be also what people come up with in firms will be relevant to the systems that they have in as well, because obviously this has got to be on an annual basis. How easy is it to replicate, etc., etc. People want to have sort of a touchy-feely certificate rather than a soft copy, because it's their ability to carry on doing what they've been employed to do. So it'll be interesting again to see how that manifests itself.
But I guess also in terms of your being able to demonstrate to the supervisor when they come knocking, you've got to make sure that as you issue this certificate, that issuance is recognised in your HR systems, your appraisal systems, your corporate governance systems generally. So I think there's some technological challenges about this.
Second question: if we include our ancillary staff within the conduct rules, do they still remain outside of the regulatory framework, i.e. any CR breaches are not reportable to the regulators for people in these roles?
That's an interesting question, and I would guess that there isn't any directive, as is the case with a lot of things, but there isn't any directive from the regulator as to what would happen if you did. But from the firms that we've spoken to, there would be an acceptance that if those people that are on that exempt list from the regulator, if they did include them in the training and they did include them overall, then they would be subject. They class them as being subject to those conduct rules. But I guess, Simon, if we could take that away and get some clarification.
Yeah, my sense is the FCA, because I think we're really talking about the FCA here, aren't we, in relation to the broader application, would not seek to pin a conduct breach on an ancillary person. I think a lot of banks have decided that actually, for the sake of completeness, it's easier to train everybody, because you never know when people might flip up from being ancillary staff to people within the scope of the regime.
That's true, especially, they one of those exempt staff is HR administrator. But I was quite surprised when I saw that in the list. so that, natural progression is to, HR business partner, etc., etc. So there is sort of implications, but I certainly agree there. So I think the point comes, isn't it, when there is a disciplinary, because as you know, the new proposals are, and this will be implemented as we know, that a breach is only reported if it's followed by a disciplinary that's more than a verbal warning. So that in itself, certainly, your staff that you employ, all staff that you employ, are subject to disciplinary. So by that very nature, you would assume that they will amalgamate those.
Yeah. Thank you. Keep your questions coming in, and that's really good. Thank you for those questions.
So moving on to the next slide is really to give you an idea of what the BBA are offering in terms of helping and supporting you in your conduct rules training and support. And the first one I'll just walk you through is a consultancy. So, if you are struggling as to what to do within your organisation, or really you just want some clarity around, do you think we're doing the right things, aligned to our structure, aligned to the people that we've got, etc., the roles, and if you like, the level of experience, then please do contact the BBA. Please do contact Philip, and we can talk through that and to give you some idea. Also offering face-to-face training. So either you can attend an open course where we'll go through a train-the-trainer type morning or afternoon with you and give you a facilitator's guide so that you can change that to your organisational procedures and processes, etc., and then deliver out internally to the people that come under the conduct rules. Or we can deliver that in-house, so do an in-house train-the-trainer to your people, and we've done that quite successfully so far, which would be, for example, 8 internal trainers if you're still lucky enough to have the luxury of having an in-house training team, and they can be trained to deliver the message and the examples in-house. And then we have the e-learning that you can access through the BBA. And I'm going to pass over in a moment to Simon to talk through the e-learning. And I guess when you look at things, you look at what are we going to do? How are we going to train our people? And my question is always, where are your risks? Where are the areas where you need to concentrate the training? Where are you going to spend the money? Whenever I look at any training, where is the biggest risk that you have? And then decide how you're going to train those people, whether it is face-to-face, whether it is e-learning, or a combination, as we've seen a lot of you are opting for that, a combination of both. So I'll hand you over to Simon from Unicorn Training, who will take you through what the BBA are offering as part of the Unicorn Compliance Serve e-learning on the new individual accountability regime. Simon.
Thank you, Philippa. So just to set the context, a little bit more context there, the e-learning we're talking about here as part of the BBA's proposition is part of something that we call Compliance Serve, which is a comprehensive compliance learning solution. I just want to pick up on Simon's point earlier. Very important that this is about changing behaviours. Compliance, e-learning has in the past sometimes had attracted a slightly negative reputation, a box-ticking exercise. We are really trying to focus here on developing the right behaviours, which is why Compliance Service is more than simply a library of content. It's very much about having a robust, auditable process to evidence competency. So yes, there's a library of content. There's some 50 titles in that library now. It's growing all the time. But we've also got CPD tracking, integrated T&C as well. We know that learning is most effective when it's in context. So hence we talked about job role families, scenario-based learning. We know is most effective. And I think, where learners are today, they want everything in sort of bite-sized chunks. It needs to be easily digestible, accessible on demand. Let me learn where I want, when I want, and from the device that I want to learn from. So the conduct rules training, along with all the other titles in the library, tend to be broken down into bite-sized chunks. And it's all really about keeping people in the workplace, giving them access to learning as and when they need it, so they can apply it immediately. So the conduct rules e-learning, for example, breaks down into a number of elements. So we always start with a short video, a sting video, typically 1 to 2 minutes, and that's really about engaging our learners. I think it's about breaking down some of the barriers to learning, but doing it very quickly in a very high-impact way, and we'll come on and have a look at an example of that. It's really important if we're talking about changing behaviours that learning is scenario-based. It's based around realistic scenarios and case studies that we can put the learner into, get them to think through the issues, answer questions, and see the consequences. We're talking here about how do the conduct rules affect me in the job that I do. So Philip said earlier, we've created a number of case studies based on these job role families. And we're adding new case studies all the time. We've already covered off those that fall under the senior manager regime, the certification regime, and the next tranche will look at the job role families outside of those. I think it's really important as well when we're trying to change behaviours that we give people refresher training. So after I've taken the initial training, 3 months, 3 weeks later, whatever. I think it's important to be able to get a summary of what those key messages are. So conduct rules also has a PDF, a short infographic that you can take at some point further down the line. And again, coming back to that sort of robust, auditable process, there needs to be obviously a formal assessment so that learners can demonstrate that they have understood what is expected of them. So, what I'm going to show you now is an example of a sting video. This is a 2-minute video on the conduct rules, just so you can get a feel for how it looks and what it's all about.
The UK's banking system is large when compared to most other major economies, and London is considered to be one of the world's major financial centres, if not the major financial centre. Yet over the past few years, the reputation of the financial sector, and banks in particular, has taken a beating. It's been estimated that since 2001, over 34 million PPI policies have been sold. The number of claims is still rising, and banks have set aside billions to compensate customers. Clearly, a vast number of customers weren't being treated fairly when they were sold these policies. PPI was not the only scandal. LIBOR, the London interbank offered rate, based on the interest rates of loans between member banks, the interbank interest rate, hit the headlines when it was discovered that a number of the member banks were manipulating the rate by not submitting actual rates. Continuing stories of currency market manipulation and bank traders using information about client orders improperly are still being investigated. But in the public's eye, it shows, at best, a lack of integrity. And then there was the banker who thought it was funny to hold a £10 note up and taunt NHS staff who were protesting about cuts in the health service. All of these, integrity, skill, care and diligence, market conduct, customers' interests and transparent relations with regulators form part of the FCA's principles for businesses. For example, a firm must conduct its business with integrity. But the narrative is changing. In the FCA's new regime to improve accountability in banking, it's now you must act with integrity. And if you don't, you can be held personally accountable.
Philip, time for another question?
Yes. Thank you for the video. I think that the one thing that we have communicated through the video is just raising awareness and raising understanding of this very important issue. And as a video which is accessible if you want to play that internally to other stakeholders, we'll make sure that that resource is available to you in the on-demand on-demand webinar, which will be sent out to you an hour after this presentation. But if you would like to kick the tires on that e-learning module on conduct rules or SMR or CR, then please get in contact with me and I will make sure that you have that for your purpose there. So question 3, and I'll just put this up on the screen now. Question 3 is on your screen, and it basically just goes through what you want us as the BBA to provide or offer support in some shape or form. So how can the BBA help you to deliver your conduct rules training? And number 1, provide you with appropriate e-learning modules like Simon has highlighted there now through our BBA e-learning academy. Number 2, support you author. So this is instructional design, designing and bespoke e-learning and face-to-face conduct rules training in your organization. And we've done that successfully with a couple of organizations already in the last few weeks. And number 3, train you to deliver conduct rules training. This is called traditionally in learning and development, T3, train the trainer, whereby we go in and we prep, work and support you with the confidence and the competency to be able to deliver training, as well as equip those individuals to go out to their organizations to deliver that training confidently and competently. And 4thly, deliver face-to-face conduct rules training. So we spend a day maybe with your non-exec directors, senior managers, and also with your certified regime people in 1 hour, 2 hour pulse sessions. So it's immediate, straightforward, very transparent, but cost-effective for you as an organization. If you'd like to click which option we could help you with, we would be grateful. Okay, should get the results up there. Any second soon, we'll get the mice whirring around in the background. Wonderful. Okay, so 33% provide you with appropriate e-learning, and 27% of you said support you in authoring and the design and training. 27% approximately wanting us to train and deliver conduct rules training across the organisation. Fantastic. That really gives us an insight and understanding, and as Simon said, through the work that we've done collaboratively, we feel that there is an opportunity here to make sure it's cost-effective, it's relevant, it's timely, and it's also representative of what a number of organisations across our membership are thinking and feeling as well. Just final thoughts from our colleagues here, as well as probably answering a couple of questions if we've got time there. Anything to final thoughts, Philippa and Simon?
No, I think it is something that you have to do. It isn't a can do if we want to. And as Simon said, and I've said previously, the regulator will be asking questions on how you've delivered this training to your population, and you've got to have the evidence to do that. But it's thinking about what is right for your organisation, what they need, and how they need it should inform how you take this forward.
Yes, I think this is all about changing the culture within organisations. So the top of the organization, the senior managers, the certification regime, those people who are material risk takers, absolutely are subject to this. But culture in organization needs to be embedded not just at the top, but right through to the bottom. And these rules of conduct are the way in which the FCA and the PRA and the Parliamentary Commission on Banking Standards, from which this initiative flowed, anticipate this is going to be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon Mercer. Thank you, Simon Hills. And thank you, Philippa, for your time today. Just forthcoming BBA webinars, so BBA workshops that we're running, 24th of February. The role of HR, very crucial role that the HR function now has in organisations due to the senior managers regime and the implications that is for them. 15th of April, SMF roles, what your senior managers' responsibilities are. Half-day training on that, and also to talk about the videos and also the opportunities of demonstrating the e-learning and provision that is offered by our colleagues at Unicorn Training. Please do email me, and also we'll push out to you the PDF, which you will find at the tab, underneath the tab of the screen, which outlines the learning offering that the BBA is now providing member organisations through Train the Trainer, through Conduct Rules e-learning training, and also instructional design. Thank you very much for your time today, and this will be available on demand within the next hour or so. Many thanks indeed.